If you don't use generative AI, eventually you will be replaced.
It will not replace them as long as they also use it to be more efficient.
The responsibility still lies on the human being, on the subject matter experts.
Why banks have not been able to faster disrupt themselves, the incumbent banks.
For a mission critical industry like banking, replacing core is not as a easy task. The bank function is ledger. And the core is a ledger. So it is a mindset shift rather than a technology impact.
So the core, the transactions, the networks, all these things need to, of course, run smoothly.
And the fast experimentation will be the key for success. So the point is no longer the yet another app. It's what's the next service you offer.
Welcome to the Pulse Check podcast. Jieke Pan, or maybe also Jieke.
Yes.
Great to have you on board, both just in terms of joining Simpulse 8 as Group Chief Technology Officer, but also visiting Hong Kong, which is bright and sunny today. I'm sure you're sweating coming from Europe. So thanks for joining me on the podcast. And as you know, we normally start with the icebreaker. So, Jieke, what makes you you?
Thank you very much, first of all, for the warm welcome, and really happy to join the podcast. Well, tricky question, but I think for me, it's my personal life. Describe who I am. I was born and raised in China, left when I was 17, and I moved to Portugal, joining my parents over there. And then I lived in Portugal for 10 years. So I speak natively Portuguese as well. I'm a Portuguese citizen after living there. And then for the last 15 years, I've been in Netherlands. So what makes me very unique is I call myself a citizen over the world, multicultural. I have lived in Asia, born and raised actually, and been working with European people from different countries, and for the last 10 years I've been leading a team consisting of 51 nationalities. We counted them. It was quite amazing. People from Egypt, from Middle East, from Asia, from Europe, and also from South America. So you got to know them, got to learn their behavior, the way, how they, and why they do certain things, and how they digest information, and and most importantly, how to form the team among them, especially with engineers. They all have their own flavors. Not only choosing the technology, but also how they work, how they taking a more broader level when we talk about like quality, right? And a lot of engineers would have different interpretation of the quality. Yet when we talk the key aspect, everyone actually is all agreeing on the same the essence. So that's a very interesting aspect, and also learning experience for me for the last I must say 10 years in my last job, and also a leadership role. So really happy to join and get on board to Simpulse and Simpulse 8.
Yeah, and what makes you unique besides the breaking the cultural boundaries across the globe is that you have now been in senior leadership roles the past 1 or 2 decades, while still also going into details, making your hands dirty by also coding still. I know you're, like me, still very interested in any new innovations, and especially then also, and I'm sure we will speak about AI, GenAI later today. So you're a very hands-on person, while of course also empowering and enabling your team. And I think that will be important, while of course also working with not only the engineers, but also the consultants, as we're also a consulting company. Speaking of which, maybe we go a bit through the past few decades, both in terms of what you've experienced, your background, but also where you've seen the technology revolution in financial services industry, both banking and insurance. Maybe starting with you first. So you've started as an engineer and you've evolved. What were maybe some of the highlights in your career?
Yeah, certainly. I started as a software engineer in the telco domain, where I got my formation as well. I'm heavily focused on mission critical solutions. Cybersecurity is one of the subjects. And then evolved into digital space. I worked in startups, scale-ups, in the mobile billing before the smartphone was the topic or the widely adopted in the market. I was already part of the industry of building the first mobile billing gateway back then with functional phones. These days we call the pre-smartphone age, and then move into ERP solution provider. So, and then get a chance to work with hyperscalers. Back then, even AWS was called Amazon Cloud. They had rolled out the first two services just for the market, because back then it was internally used by Amazon, and then they decided to roll out. So I had a chance to work with them at a very early stage when the cloud was out there, and I had a chance to really launch the industry-grade ERP solutions together with the hyperscalers, test it out. It's quite adventurous because it's also comes on the softer aspects of how you cover the compliance of data privacy for the customers in a mission-critical solution domains, because we were targeting back then manufacturing customers, right? The large car producers. Although the information are related to their business, although it's not a PII, but still very sensitive. Hence, so how you take the immediate move into cloud and how you take the architectural strategy alongside with them, yet you're working for a software provider. So you have limitations of the existing customers in the space which they are still running on premises. It's a conventional, right? Back then it's obvious. Oh, you come and even with the DVD, you install in my data center. We sign a contract for 5 years license. You do the maintenance. If things goes wrong, you come to my data center, right? And everything is well shielded and protected, and follow the procedures. Now everything's virtual, and for customers who were used to that procedure, and suddenly gets into, oh wow, so now it's called DevOps engineer. You're going to manage my data center virtually from home offices. So that's already a big shift for them in terms of procedural. But then when it comes to technology, you got to take a stage-based approach. So it was quite a learning curve. And back then I learned that we had to build what we call the hybrid cloud connector, where the compute happens on the cloud, but data sits on premises. And you got to build a pipeline, or you got to build a bridge, so to speak, to carry on the data, only necessary data, to the cloud for compute, and get back the results and store on the backbone of the on-prem hosting data center. So it becomes a very interesting challenge to tackle at early stage. Nowadays, well, I stopped counting. There are more than 200 services from the hyperscalers they make available for you to use at the stage of at each solution stage for the problem, right? So you have the right tool for the right problem. But gone through that phase, now getting to very, very interesting era where we are, is everything moves every day differently. So because of generative AI and beyond, it's no longer the hype, but it becomes a part of our day-to-day topic, but also the tools and activities. It's impacting our daily life now. And especially for the financial services domain, you see over the past decade, the topic of digital transformation is always the highest priority topic that CIOs, CTOs want to bring, or head of innovation, or CDOs, they wanted to do with all great purpose and intention. And often it end up in very different results or plan moving forward, right? We interact with a lot of customers, and you get into discussion of, I want to transform. So the first step is I want to replace my core. And it is very interesting, right? And for a mission critical industry like banking, replacing core is not as a easy task as you just buy another vendor and you started to do move all the workload into it. It has to have a proper planning. Now the question is not about were you able to do it or is it possible to do it. The question is why.
And maybe I stop you there for a second. The why, which of course always goes back to the customer and the customer experience. Taking a step back 50 years ago, when we were young, and maybe also for the younger generation to understand what actually banking was. So banking is hundreds of years old, if not almost 1,000. It's one of the oldest industries. Of course, it was completely manual back then, exchanging gold or other forms, till there were coins and later, of course, the currencies we have today. It was actually only in the 60s, 70s where a big part of the revolution happened when it comes to really technology advancement in banking. Starting with, for example, a credit card. The first magnetic credit card, I believe, was in the 60s. Yeah. Then the first digital exchange of information with then also later the SWIFT network, international payments in the 70s. Of course, then also the mainframe systems applications that now is called legacy, but back then revolutionized on how to store and digitize information. I still remember when I was a kid in the 80s having a small booklet where my savings was written in, and if I wanted to understand now how much basically my savings was growing due to interest rate, I had to go to the bank and they were then calculating on their mainframe system, and then they added another line with, you, by the way, in the last 6 or 12 months, you earned that much interest, so that's your new balance. And then I was proud going home with that small booklet. Almost impossible to understand that actually you were not even aware of how much you have on your bank account. You didn't have a mobile app, you didn't have online banking. E-banking, online banking only then happened mid-90s. Right, so at the beginning, actually, financial services, banking was revolutionizing all the industries by moving first to mainframe systems. And now we call sometimes banking lagging behind other industries. You've already alluded towards, of course, shift towards cloud, but you also alluded towards the fact that there is, of course, a lot of sensitivity around data, financial services is, of course, very critical. No one wants to suddenly lose money in between the wires. So maybe highlight quickly what the big challenges are, why banks have not been able to faster disrupt themselves, the incumbent banks, going then maybe then also towards digital banks that actually have disrupted the industries.
Yeah, so I think it comes with the nature of the evolution. And back then, the digital definition has been floating around in the financial services, if I'm not mistaken, for the last 15 years. And before that, and everything in the definition of less techy or less digital people, whatever that delivers automation is we call IT, right? The conventional IT. And these days, if you talk to technical people, the IT definition also is blurring into a different domains, areas, and responsibilities. Back then, it is IT's response for data center, for the solution, and you really have to have the on-premises, well-shielded, protected data center, have one solid platform solutions, install them, maintained well. And when it comes to banking capabilities, and it's very interesting you use the example, immediately reminds me, back then I was back in China living with my grandma. It was early 90s even still. And for her, it's very important every month I go to the bank, ask for a booklet which is printed, all the transactions on paper, on her booklet. So I take home. So she's convinced that the money is safely stored in the bank. I think that's the reason why I want to mentioning that. It's not because my grandma's generation back then don't trust. The bank function is ledger, and the core is a ledger. So until today is a ledger. It's the trust where the system of records, the information of the truth is there. So that prevents the whole institute as a bank to organizationally transform so easily, because there are the barriers of, you need to get a compliance. Well, pen test takes 6 months. Well, that regulations are coming along, we can't change. And besides, because license-wise, we have already bought a server and a license of a software vendor which fulfills 80-90% of capabilities. And why would we change? The point is that now the key is we see is banks want to get much more innovation beyond their core business, which is banking activities, beyond even the wealth management or selling the product to the customers. For the banks, just like any other industry, they wanted to also becomes a urge to learn what their customers are looking for. Hence, you see the challenger banks, they have a list of the legacy, or they don't have. That's why they move so fast, because of just like any other industries, right? The reason why they can achieve the speed of innovation is they don't have these legacy behind them, but they still have the regulatory requirements to fulfill. They still have the compliance. They still need to speed up their pen test. So those aspects are still there. The effort is still there. So it is a mindset shift rather than a technology impact. Nothing wrong with those, we call it old systems or legacy systems. They have, nowadays we call it monolith solutions, or more classic way, one system deliver all the business capabilities. Nothing wrong with that. It is all about the mindset shift is how can I take what I have as a state now into an innovative state 2 years, 5 years later. But in order to achieve that, how can I take the step-by-step approach, right? And there are multiple ways to do it, and closer to the business needs, closer to your customers' needs, more efficient and better the plan is. And typically, we also see, and what I've experienced over the past few years, is the case which slows down bank to innovate fast are actually internal transformations without connecting to the market, without learning what it is needed there. Does not necessarily mean you need to offer all kinds of innovative products out there, right? Many years back, or even today, it's still the ETF is a hot topic. We need to sell. We need to have support on those products. Products remains products. Customer portfolio remains customer portfolio. But if you just kind of close your door and do internal transformation, that's very dangerous these days, right? It needs to highly connected what IT is transforming, or from the IT investment perspective, what the technology transforming, towards the business. It's very important. So that change the way how you plan your activities. It's outside in instead of inside out. So you will rethink the steps that you may not want to replace core in the first instance. I'm not saying the replace core is bad approach. In some scenarios, you do need, because there's a missing capability for the time being, and it's internal struggles of the process automations. There are many ways. But again, these are the business reasons. It's enforce you to plan things in a prioritized way. So on the other hand, the challenge is, the core is quite big in terms of business capability coverage, right? How can we break them down into pieces so that do I need to come to the question of buy or build, or do I create something so that I can replace partial of the capability internally for the time being? What about the new sectors, segments of the market that are launching new services? All these questions, and you can plan your digital strategy, transformation strategy in a different way. And it's all tied to what bank and the bank's vision is. So you do need to see is what do you want to position your bank in the market? Is a innovation leader? Everyone says so, right? You see the marketing campaigns, AI is everywhere. But you need to kind of peel the layer of the onion to the next layer is what truly identify you bank as a bank to the market. And you can take one aspect is your segments, your customers. You've been seen as the private banking in the market, the wealth management leader, right? Or you are targeting to the youth generation for innovative activities or solutions or products you launch for that community. So who are your target group? Then define the customer journey, right? And those journeys, you need to see where the innovation and the beneficial for bank is for the product you offer or services you want to launch. And in combination as well is it a likable product by the customers? So we often say, in my world and definition and experience is the golden triangle where product roadmap plays a role in combination with customer experience. So it's a product deliver business value. On the other hand, it gives a great user experience and great customer experience, right? To fulfill certain journey. And then you decide what the technology to enable. And then when it comes to the technology part, the buy or build also has to do with the nature of the bank. Are you a technical driven organization as a bank? Or historically speaking, you don't have, let's say, internal engineering capability, software engineering capability per se to support if you decide to go build instead of buy. And what are the other capabilities, the supporting roles and the business roles and consulting roles internally, and also your partner ecosystem, right, services companies, that you could fulfill the technology offering, be realistic, right? And the fulfilling is the enablement for that two aspects. Product, so the brings also, to be blunt, brings the revenue potential to the bank, which is business viable, right? But also deliver the great experience. And experience often also gets misinterpreted. People immediately say, oh, let's have a great design, right? It's the top lead design agency, let's do it really functionally, but also user experience, super nice experience to the customer from graphical UI design perspective. But that's just a small portion of what we call the customer journey. Sometimes you don't need to have a design, heavy designs to fulfill those journeys. These days, everyone has their own LLM in their pocket, as I say. The experience of the prompt engineering experience, the chatbot experience becomes a very natural now. It's no longer intrusive. So how heavy you want to invest that? That's all impacts on the technology investment underneath.
I mean, before we probably go deep into GenAI and large language models, maybe first summarizing what you're saying, and if you speak about core, it's basically the book of records, the core system where all the information about the customer's balance, of course, is stored. Brett King always says that banking in general is actually only three things. It's very basic. It's debit, basically storing value, being currencies, cash, or even having ownership in other companies through equities, shares, bonds, and so on. Or on the other hand, it's credit. Second element, of course, you draw credit, you have your credit card, or you draw loans, and so on. And then it's the transactions in between, right? And of course, it's not just one person, it's between several parties, but it's only those three things. So very basic, but it needs to be, as you said, because banks need to have the trust of the customers, and that's the most important element of the experience. If the customers lose trust because you mess something up in the background, then it's not about the design at the front. So that's why these all AS400 mainframe systems that are still running, they are still also connected to ATMs, to branches and so on. And if suddenly you go to Thailand on holiday and you want to draw some cash from your bank account and you cannot because something goes wrong at the back, that's the worst experience. And it's not even what you see on the app, right? So the core, the transactions, the networks, all these things need to, of course, run smoothly. You don't see it, it's all at the back, but 24/7 these things need to be up and running, right? That's why I always say if you want to replace the core, it's almost like a heart transplantation or a changing the engine of a running Formula One car, because again, you cannot afford that even just 1 hour people cannot draw money from their account, right? So that's understood. Of course, at the front, there's still the client experience nowadays all on apps and not online or in branches anymore. So let's look into the next, say, 5-10 years from now with knowing, yes, AI and GenAI are helping to disrupt the banking industry. So what are maybe the top 3 key elements that are changing the industry? I'm sure GenAI is one of them, and then we can deep dive further into those elements.
Yeah, certainly. I will not throw the keywords here because otherwise it sounds very marketing. And as an engineer, what I see here, and also what is supporting towards the digital innovation roadmap for the banks or financial services in general, and is you're absolutely right. The ledger needs to be there. It needs to be trustworthy. It should be. And it's intact, right? But how can we get the data out of it? That's the key. And API, well, it's no longer the new terminology anymore, but the API strategy is key, right? How can I get the data out of my core systems? What kind of data I get out for a reason of generating value out of it? Knowing my customer, what's their financial life? Can I give advice on it? Can I run solutions on top without reviewing any privacy towards the rest of the solutions that's running there, but still delivering the what the customer is needed, or enrich the information that we can discover better product for the customers. That's in the end is the activity, financial services in banking in general, and especially investment banking is need as advice. But even taking even broader level for the underwriting journeys for insurance, that's exactly the same, information availability. And in order to get that, API is the key, right? And the API economy is even more interesting for whoever enables that, right? And why is that so important is it defines what each system can offer, and also gives the ability you connect it once, you are able to fetch in the information continuously. It is not like every month I need to print the booklet. The booklet is there. The printing interface is there. I just need to put my paper there, right? So it's very important to see it's not about the API only enabling. Is about what kind of API contracts you put there, the data content is there. It needs to be really insightful driven, so data driven APIs.
And open banking.
Exactly. So and bring this beyond is, hey, but who is connecting to me? So I need to make it easy for people, for institute, for service providers, for solution providers, other softwares, other companies, even other banks, or even other institutes, right? Even insurance and other companies in the world within the financial services domain, that they can connect it easily into the information I want to expose for certain purposes. So then it comes with how easy you can connect to my API, right? Connecting to API is one thing. I know what you offer, but how can I work with it? I don't know the journey. Where do I start? Calling the step 3, calling step 4, it's very technical. Because suddenly you take your data, which is valuable for business people, into a technical world. Right? So you need to make engineers, developers' life easy. So then naturally you will build steps as a marketplace with SDKs, with use cases to illustrate and what kind of flow, business logic in the domain of technical people that they can understand. And also for business people, they see, oh, this being covered in that capabilities. Those are the data I can get out. The best way is a openly expose your APIs, that there's a well-established community, agree on those contracts. It's not we need to kind of convince everyone to do so. It is because you are the financial institutes, right? As a bank, you already know what kind of data, typically in the domain, you do and make sense to expose. I'm talking about the metadata definition, but that's actually describe the journey, right? Like what you kind of used as example, the deposit, the credit, and the payment. Those don't change that much across the banks or financial institutes. There are even standard protocol there, right? So those APIs, the best strategy is I openly expose them so the people can see what capability I'm exposing. You see a lot of challenger banks these days also doing exactly the same. Open API 3 for open banking, open wealth, the defining also the wealth management world, and even the insurance equivalently. There are also initiatives on the open insurance domain. But all comes with the open API definition, so I make it easier for the community to connect to me. Right? Another thing is, I will take it further, is, well, here's API, let me offer you an adapter. Right? So that gives you all the capabilities. You can just hook it up in your system. So that's beyond just a SDK which hides the technical complexity. Now I'm taking the technically driven, business valuable solution for the API which I offer, the booklet data, now at your hands, which is a information ready to use. And for your ecosystem, for your world of the IT, people can integrate it and hook it up very easily into widely adopted technology programming frameworks. For business people, they know, this adapter covers those capabilities already. So you take 2 steps further of ready-to-use solutions. The concept I'm describing here is it's not a kind of innovative and disruptive idea. We use it in constructions, right? We use it in our day-to-day life. I'm traveling here to Hong Kong, came from Netherlands. Well, first thing is a power supply, the adapter I need to bring. Guess what? I don't build it at home because I don't have the knowledge and I should not, right? So those are the electrical wires which requires certain knowledge, but also certification. So I buy it from certified store, an adapter ready to use. On top of that, even I'm an electrician, I will not spend effort on that.
And I think you allude to the basics of what actually banking nowadays needs to offer, and also insurance likewise. So when it's all open up and data can be exposed, then of course it goes then towards also the client and customer experience. I think to come maybe to the last section, GenAI of course changes a bit the way how people can also interact and interfere with applications and get information in a very easy, simple to understand structured form. So you can ask your ChatGPT, your prompt, hey, can you give me my balance, my account statement, instead of going with the booklet to the branch, and you can start to interact and make it much easier by not scrolling through maybe an app or e-banking.
Yeah.
I heard in latest podcasts with also Brad King, as well as also, of course, Elon Musk and others that really try to innovate first principle thinking of in the future you may not even just look at the screen anymore, but you have of course your Google Glass or Meta glasses and immediately with also how you interact if you're in a store and so on, maybe okay, can I afford a new TV or whatever it is, that you get the right information at hand and you can take decisions. So how do you think will this evolve in, say, 10 years from now, in how consumers will interact with banks?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell, but one thing I would really advise based on the experience had so far is the digital innovation transformation is become more and more lightweighted when it comes to creating solutions. It requires fast to the market in terms of speed, not only, but productivity, right? And connecting to the topic you mentioned, generative AI, there's a fear in the market whether this will replace workforce. Using a different analogy to describe, if you don't use generative AI, eventually you will be replaced. It's not a generative AI to replace you. It's an additional tool to speed up your day-to-day work for the common repeatable tasks. And for even slightly complex tasks as you do day-to-day, and those will be carried on by a tool, right? That's how technology evolution has been carried on years long until today. It's not a generative AI suddenly do that job. We create solutions to basically replace the common activities that bankers and insurance underwriters does, right? A couple years back, they were using spreadsheet, right? Then the on paper, then spreadsheet becomes a digital spreadsheet. So it's a normal and actually I call it conventional evolution. Only thing is that spice it up with intelligence on it. It's no longer the pre-programmed deterministic way, right? 1 + 1 = 2, might be 2, right? Well, in that case, it's 2, but you get what I mean. It's a probability based on, so there will be a lot more information enriched generated out there. So besides of your common activity being covered, there will be much more productivity gain as a virtual assistant continuously sits next to you in your pocket, in your laptop, no matter where it is. Now back to the question how the things will evolve. It's pretty hard to predict, but my advice is the investments need to become a gradual. And you need to take is the approach of as service providers or solution providers, and also for the customers, is you need to see what are the common and don't repeat those commons, right? And use vendors that already deliver those solutions, not as a definition out of box, but as an acceleration. And the reason is why you wanted to take those, because you get from the subject matter expert companies and services, which they've done many, many times for many different customers. And for those companies, they also should start creating those components, solutions, platforms or capabilities that offers, right, already ground up capabilities that you can build innovation very fast on top of it. And the fast experimentation will be the key for success. You want to validate not only user experience, but your business goals, your new products. If it doesn't work, you can pull it back very quickly. It's no longer the purchasing very expensive machine. You know that will work, and then turns out 5 years later, nobody adopted it. If I look at in my experience 10 years ago, actually, it's a huge hype. All the banks want to have digital bank propositions. Mobile banking first, the branchless, you download the app, you open up the account by scanning your passport face, and you get a digital onboard, and get suddenly, immediately or day next, you have a virtual card to pay. That's is no longer, now is a conventional subject for any bank. Everyone has their own digital bank. There are so many choices now, right? So the point is no longer the yet another app. It's what's the next service you offer? It's an app, it's a chat, that's just a technology enabler. And we need to think, and always from a lightweighted approach, to directly to what business value and user experience you want to deliver. And it can be delivered in many forms, right? As long as the information gets to the accuracy level, that's exactly what I want to see.
I think you bring in a very interesting, important point. As we said earlier, there's trust. That is a key element in banking. Everyone is immediately worried when it's about their finances. So there needs to be the trust. And of course, while LLMs, large language models, are convenient to structure data, gather, fetch data quickly, and it's very interactive and so on. But there is, of course, it's all probability based. Yeah. And someone has to, of course, then also check it, and not only the customer, but also then the person, the human in between. And many say that the human touch still needs to remain, especially in high touch banking, like private banking. But also when it comes to insurance, you may only sign once or twice a life insurance policy, and it's a very critical, important moment, and you want to really understand what you're signing up for. While, of course, also there, the GenAI can help to actually make it easier to understand, and also the agent to use it to explain it to the customer. But that human element to still make sure that the trust remains will be critical even in the future.
Yes, certainly the intervention also on take it to a broader level on the software engineering domain. A lot of engineers now, companies are using generative AI enabled code editors to speed up and the productivity on productivity. And what we're seeing, and they're saying even in the society that's called vibe coding, right? Mm-hmm. Very scary, by the way. But what is very important aspect is a human intervention at acceptance level, right? It's robots, AIs can do what they can do, but the final result, either it's information generator, either it's code, no matter what it is, the responsibility still lies on the human being, on the subject matter experts, right? In the job that you are entitled, certified, and qualified to do. So that's a aspect you will not remove away so easily in the upcoming years. Now, the information will become very easy to access and very fast at your hands. That is we are revolutionizing right now. And it's comparatively to the years past, we're talking about a month of information gathering into milliseconds. Now, how trustworthy, how accurate those information, so that free up the subject matter experts, free up the agents, free up the underwriters, the engineers to do their job right, to take those freed up time to level up their skills and experience so they can make their final decision, judgment quicker even. So it's speeding up everyone together with the acceleration of this technology wave. And it's quite exciting. And the reason is there's so much going on at day-to-day basis. It's no longer the monthly releases or quarterly rollout. It's a daily rollout. So eventually you gotta make a decision what fits for you, because there will be a lot of alternatives out there. And also, and what fits for your job, it's an important topic, because there are many co-pilots out there, there are many agents, right? And a few months later, it probably agent is already outdated topic, I'm pretty sure. So
no, you bring it to the point. It's exciting times. I think GenAI helps really, of course, in terms of customer experience, but also in terms of technology engineers to be more productive, more effective. It will not replace them as long as they also use it to be more efficient. We're on time. I know we could deep dive much further into that topic probably at the next time.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Jieke Pan, for joining me today and exploring the GenAI and technology advancement in banking and insurance. And with this, please subscribe to the Pulse Check podcast. And thank you once again, Jieke.
Thank you very much.